Soldiers Lost in Battle time. Right, this is good. This is the best Soldiers Lost in Battle story ever. Part 1 today. Get you there, get you set up for it. Like a Netflix, like a good Netflix doc.
Yeah.
You were like, ugh. Next week you'll have to hang around. Right, it's got some different music for it. So.
Yeah. Soldiers Lost in Battle.
Yeah, because we're setting the scene, aren't we? It was May 2003 and a frisson of ecstasy and elation hung over the drab exterior of a rain-sodden Glasgow airport. Amassed ranks of green and white supporters teemed from the entrance to the departure lounge. The stage was set, the invasion of land, sea and air had begun. 80,000 Hoops fans descended upon the sun-drenched Andalusian capital Seville. Love that. This was Celtic's first European final in 33 years and 3 18-year-old boys' first holiday together. Myself and my pals Davey and John had 3 of the hottest tickets in all of Britain. Martin O'Neill's Celtic versus Jose Mourinho's Porto in the UEFA Cup final. It was the night before the final. Davey, John and I decided to go out and revel in the pre-match festivities. Alcohol. Such was the colonialisation by Celtic fans. Seville was like Glasgow, except with sun and much better beer. It was beautiful. We lost John early on. He got lucky with a girl and went back to her hotel. If only then we'd known how lucky he was. Davey and I somewhat fatefully followed a group of Porto fans that neither of us could understand into a dingy bar. That's where we met him. Takes a turn now. To this day, I couldn't tell you this man's name, but his moniker from that day forth was White Teeth. The man had a mouth of pearly whites that could induce seizures, and he had all the smarmy charm to go with it. He used a sickly sweet confidence that wafted into the room, announcing his presence before he arrived and thereby ensuring every eye fell upon him as he entered, which he duly ignored with visible pleasure. This is brilliant. This was a man who needed no friends, no entourage. His friends were wherever his pint happened to sit. From one night to the next, amongst all the eyes appraising him, he honed in on mine and Davies and was upon us in a smirking flash. All right, lads, just got here 20 minutes ago. Drove all the way from Glasgow. I need a effing pint, he announced. Now up close, this bastard was just annoyingly handsome. He didn't even look Scottish, with his deep tan, perfectly coiffed hair and his teeth. Those bloody teeth, so large and gleaming that they looked like they had been carved from elephant tusks. He looked like he'd strolled right out of Beverly Hills, not Bridgeton. The one imperfection, the one ink blot on White Teeth's appearance. He had a very unusual and unsightly scar on his left arm, which he had tried successfully to mask with a tattoo of the Celtic crest scrawled across it. I didn't trust him. Something didn't sit right. There was a synthetic, unnatural quality about him, like when QPR win back-to-back games. No need for that. It was that self-satisfied air of a man believing there was nothing in this world you could do for him that he couldn't do himself. A deviousness hung low behind the apparent dismissiveness. He portrayed an absolute confidence that was simultaneously endearing and unsettling as he began commanding the room with his personality. You could feel the aura he projected while others were intoxicated by it, ensnared by it. I sensed its unchecked malevolence. But Davey liked him, mostly because he thought he'd help us get some fit birds. Davey was the looking for good in people upbeat James to my cynical, miserable Flav. I'd have happily slammed the bastard in room 69 and thrown away the key, but alas, I didn't. So we drank about, began extolling the virtues of our wonderful team and its wonderful campaign. The rest of the night was an intermittent haze. 6 a.m. rolled around. If we were drunk when White Teeth had first shown up, now we were positively steaming. I can't remember the exact details, but because White Teeth didn't have a hotel room, Davey had invited him to sleep on the couch in the flat we'd rented. We got back, he collapsed on the couch. Davey and I somehow made it to our beds and conked out. I awoke at 2 p.m. with the Spanish afternoon sun stroking my face. Any notion of a hangover was eviscerated by the sheer excitement. Today, Celtic were going to be European champions. Or sort of. I gave Davey a kick and made my way to the door. I went to open it, but it wouldn't open. It's funny, when I look back on that moment, my first instinct, for a fleeting second, was a feeling of an innocent bit of fun, rather than the sheer horror that was about to unfold. Haha, very funny, I said to Davey as I gave him another kick. What have you done to the door, you tit? What the hell are you talking about? Davy groaned. He got up and moved to the door warily, believing me to be the one winding him up. When he tried to open it and the genuine confusion that seeped through his face when it couldn't, that was when my panic set in. Don't fucking wind me up, Davy, I blasted. Don't you fucking wind me up, you tit, Davy roared back. I didn't do this honestly, I protested. I started banging on the door to get White Teeth's attention. What was his name again? I demanded Davy. I can't remember, Davy mumbled. Hey mate, we're stuck in here. Can you see if anything is jamming from that side? I bellowed through the door while banging as hard as I could. Davy joined in, shouting, wake up, you stupid prick. Wake fucking up. We're stuck in here. I lost patience. I moved to retrieve my phone so I could call John. As I searched for the phone, starting with a lazy scan of the room and culminating in a panic tossing of bags, pillows, and eventually whole beds, the horror began to break through. Not the true horror. No, that beautiful realisation was being saved for a perverse climax a few minutes down the road, but a horror nonetheless. End of part 1.
Mate, that guy can write.
Yeah. I think that bastard has robbed us, Davy. My phone's not here, I shrieked. Davy moved to his wallet that was sitting on the bedside table. I'll fucking kill him. Davy broke off mid-sentence. Oh no, it's okay. All my cards and money are still here. It's funny how your mind associates the most valuable thing to steal from someone as being money. So our minds first flitted to bank cards and notes, but in this instance, on this day, in this unique setting, something much more valuable, something that money literally couldn't buy, nestled in our wallets. The tickets! We both yelled in unison. Should we do that? 1, 2, 3. The tickets! Davy began to rifle through his wallet like a man possessed. No, he cried. I didn't need to ask. I knew the minute the words left my mouth what had happened. Yet still in a pathetic panic, I ran to my wallet, tore it open, snatching everything inside and throwing it onto my bed. Only to find, just as Davy had, all my money untouched, all my bank cards in place. But my prized possession, my key to a match over 3 decades in the making, my ticket, gone. I literally collapsed to the floor and pounded the ground. The words, the expletives, the imagery, the sheer rage I conjured in those hate-filled moments cannot be repeated here. Well, if you want to keep your sponsorship, that is. Love you, family. White Teeth had stolen our tickets while we slept and then locked the door. We later discovered he had done this by barricading it with the couch we'd so graciously allowed him to sleep on. In the darker moments of the painful years that followed, when I would linger over the memories of this theft, I started to think the prick was never actually drinking, but plying us with drink, while pretending to be drunk, a plan from the beginning to steal my ticket, my moment in the sun, my birthright. It's good, isn't it? We banged on the door for hours, hoping someone would hear and set us free, but no one did. Our only hope was John would return to check on us, or at least have a wash. The dirty bugger. But no, he was too busy away ploughing some random bird to check on his friends. We were on the 4th floor, and at one point we managed to get the attention of some bemused locals down on the road who couldn't really hear us. And even if they could, I don't think they understood us, or perhaps more likely thought us some typical drunken Scotsman just pissing about, having a laugh, hanging out a 4-story window. I suppose you couldn't blame them. There were 80,000 of us in the city. To a man, most likely pished. As 8:45 p.m. rolled around, the kick-off time, we were utterly distraught. We realised our golden moment, our dream was over. We would miss Celtic in a European final completely. We wouldn't even get to see it on TV like everyone back home. Add to this, I was dehydrated from the booze, aching from hunger, and Davey kept telling me he was desperate for a shit. We had one 2-litre bottle of water between us, and somewhat miraculously, Davey found an old shitty radio from one of the bedroom's cupboards. We could only find Spanish stations, and it took us half an hour to find anything sounding remotely like football, but we found it. Problem was neither of us spoke Spanish, beyond hola chica. So what turned out to be a pulsating final by all accounts was experienced by Davey and I as follows. Incomprehensible Spanish, incomprehensible Spanish. Larson, incomprehensible Spanish, incomprehensible Spanish. Sutton, incomprehensible Spanish, incomprehensible Spanish. Deco, incomprehensible Spanish, incomprehensible Spanish. Bobo Balde, goal! Porto, goal! Celtic. After 120 minutes of this barely comprehensible torture, we just about ascertained that Celtic had lost 2-3 and our misery was complete. John showed up later that night, still with that random bird for fuck's sake, and set us free. So that's my tale. And just one final note. Anytime another viewer tries to put forward a story about missing an FA Cup final because their mean girlfriend or mean mummy wouldn't let them go, just picture the image of me having to look away as my best friend Davey takes a shit in a carrier bag in the corner of that bedroom and using his old socks to wipe his arse.
Oh my god!
By the way, the story doesn't end here.
What?
I met White Teeth again some years later.
Hold on, how much? Is there lots left? Do we save this for another week?
Right, I didn't want to include it because this was already ridiculously long. But if you're interested, there is a sequel to this.
Come on! Yes! Yes!
You sort the sound on that when you scream.
Oh! Mate, that was so good. Yeah, 100%. Next week, please send it all in as much detail.
Incredible. I entered the room, breaking into a natural smile as my foot crossed the threshold. Mary, noticing me, tried to reciprocate but faltered. The creases at the corner of her mouth turned upwards, but before the smile could span out across the rest of her face, she broke off, muffling tears and looking deliberately away from me. Responding to this, Dan approached me, looking at me with half a smile, and then his eyes fell to the floor. They've given him 2 weeks, son, at best. What? I responded, with the T from the what falling away as my mouth struggled to formulate the simplest word, leaving me saying something more akin to, what? 2 weeks, Dan reiterated as the tears began to gather in the corners of his eyes. They say it's much more aggressive than they originally thought, and it's spread. I exhaled in disbelieving derision. They said he'd have a couple of years at least, that they'd caught it early enough. Mary's whimper raised to a howl as I recounted our dashed expectations. I know, they've got it wrong. Dan broke off and turned away in silent sobbing. Disbelief had turned to dumbstruck, and I stood there in silence, in the hospital waiting room, as Davy's parents cried for the cruelly curtailed life of their son. This was 2010, 7 years after the events of the original Soldiers Lost in Battle. Grief consumed my body, sadness enveloped my soul, and every utterance I tried to muster collapsed upon the ridges of my tongue. It took me 10 minutes and all my effort to collect myself, but I did. I straightened myself up, wiped my eyes, steadied my chin, and went in to see Davy. I entered the room and Davy snapped, "I'm literally fucking dying here, and you still managed to show up bloody late." Davy burst out laughing, and for the first time since I'd entered the room, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, and I laughed. We talked for hours, recounting past glories, humbling humiliations, and the many good and joyous times which had shaped our friendship. Conversation eventually turned to that fateful day 7 years ago in Seville. The passing of time hadn't fully abated the anger. The disappointment had minorly diminished, but the hate figure still burned in our collective consciousness. White Teeth! I so wished we'd seen that prick again, mourned Davy, as we finished sharing our memories. I straightened up in my seat, the mere mention of his name hardening my posture. I know, but it's been so long. Would we recognise him? What could you even do? I said quizzically. I know what I'd fucking do, Davy replied. If you ever do see that marble-toothed prick again, promise me you'll knock the thieving bastard out. We both burst out laughing. I had never punched someone in my life, and although the proposition was tempting, it wasn't really my style. It was said with tongue firmly in cheek, but the way the traces of moisture upon Davy's soft brown eyes flickered against a backdrop of dying embers of youthful life meant the request stayed with me long after the laughter had faded. And another thing, he continued, as if getting a few last gripes off his chest, pull your fucking finger out and ask Anna out. It's just getting sad the way you look at her with that creepy yearning. I will do, mate, I will, I replied with a sorrowful smile. We parted company and I left the hospital unsure if I'd ever see my best friend again. I wouldn't. Davy died 3 days later in his sleep. Even before Davy's request, I couldn't shake the experience with white teeth. Justice eluded me, and the unfairness drove suspicion. The combination of time and alcohol-laden meeting meant that I couldn't really remember what he looked like with any precision. More just his general look and those character-defining teeth. The animosity hadn't left. I despised him for what he'd done. One of your own, a fellow fan of the club. I loved screwing you over. But how does one hate a memory? The rage had evaporated into a kind of ethereal menace, re-emerging as a dark cloud over me whenever I came across someone I knew I disliked. If I met someone with prominent gleaming teeth, I instantly started wondering if it was him. The face was hazy, but the teeth, they pierced my mist-like memory. In the intervening years, it had become somewhat fashionable to wield ceramic tiles to the front of your grille, so the feature was less distinguishing. That didn't stop me scanning intently anyone who matched his build, height, and pervasive teeth. I could have sworn I'd seen him a few times, but each time it didn't feel right. The aura wasn't the same. It just wasn't him. I eventually reconciled to the fact that I was torturing myself unnecessarily. I had made a monster of the memory, and no being, villainous or otherwise, could match up to the Lucifer that had latched to the tendrils of my mind. He had done what he'd done and got away with it. Davy's words could ring, the rage could burn, but it was done. He had won, or so I thought. The 22nd of November 2014, the day of John's 30th birthday, and the second most tortuous of my life. John told me he was having a big party. He had hired out a function suite, and most importantly of all, Anna was going to be there. Anna. What to say about Anna? I could invoke the cliche nausea of the one, but that would not do this girl justice. Her beauty and appearance and allure was only matched by the intricacies of her mesmeric character and elegantly seductive soul. Anna was the girl who I think most men come across in their life. The one that is a friend of a friend, orbiting your social circle and you hers, all the while knowing neither of the twain shall meet. Stolen glances shared, awkward smile, talk stomached, the sheer electricity charging through your very being when you catch her warm smile. She was perennially in relationships, but not because she had to be. People didn't do casual with this girl. I didn't do casual with this girl, and I was only with her in my mind. We had opportunities, chances, and static connection faltering upon my failing courage. I always bottled it, part cowardice, part selfishness, for I knew after her there would be no other. She was the silverware to my spurs, forever destined to watch her carried away in another man's arms. Worse than that, like Spurs, I developed some perverse, fateful romanticism that it was better this way, a nobility in my longing. But at the party, I had decided this was going to be the moment. Too long had I lingered in the retreating realm of what if. I'd heed Davy's instruction. I would make my move. I'd drunk enough, but not too much. I'd recited my lines. I was ready. Anna arrived, and my spirit soared. But she was with another man.
No!
He entered 2 paces behind her and smiled as he gazed at her, revealing teeth so large and gleaming that my breath caught in my throat. End of part 1.
No! This is insane!
Fucking mental. It couldn't be, I whispered. A whispering tone menaced within my mind as I literally swayed on my feet. A sweet familiar scent stung my nostrils. The room's attention magnetised to their arrival, but unlike before, it was split between the beauty of Anna and the presence of him. I could have sworn I caught a glimpse of irritation in his look as he realised all eyes were not drawn to his charismatic odour. I could feel my grip tightening around my glass as my teeth grinded in barely suppressed rage. Could it be? My tormentor in chief? My nemesis? How long I'd wanted to set the record straight with him, and now here he was, with the woman I'd wanted for what felt like a lifetime. I was due compensation from karma, and yet, here I was being fucked over by fate again. I turned away, lifted my glass and took another drink, trying to collect my thoughts as my mind raced away from me. Then, like a long shadow, I felt the presence behind me, before the words crossed my ears. "Hiya, how are you?" a light tone rang, juxtaposing the dark presence at my back. I turned around and there they both were. Sorry, it's a bit too loud. Just as slickly as the night in the bar, he was upon me. It was Anna who asked the question, but my eyes were fixed upon boring a hole into his head. Are you okay? Anna asked with audible concern. Oh, yeah, sure, I flustered, my shaky tones betraying the storm that raged within. Yes, I'm good. How are you, Anna? I'm great. This is Alistair, my boyfriend. She beamed. The last two words sounded almost like adjuncts, as though she was making a point rather than conveying information. It still didn't stop them searing acidly to my soul. Oh, I scrambled for the appropriate words. But what seemed appropriate to me in that moment would have been the most inappropriate words imaginable to Anna and everyone else in that room. Nice to meet you, I said, and simultaneously felt as though I'd thrown up on myself. I wanted to kill him, not dabble in pleasantries. Good to meet you, mate, he replied, and began to gaze around the room nonchalantly. Was it possible that he didn't remember me? Or was he like me, trying to play it cool until he could get a handle on the situation? I knew he could act well, so maybe, but the thought that he may have forgotten me only served to heighten my rage. Alistair, I began, not knowing where the end of the sentence would take me. But before I could find out, John and some other friends invaded our standoff, anxious to meet and greet Anna and the pervading presence that was him. In some ways, I was grateful for the interruption. It gave me time to process my thoughts and steady my nerve. The conversation took off as I lingered on the edges of the group. In seething silence, just as before, Alistair began commanding the conversation. Conducting intrigue, laughs and impressed sways as though a day had not passed from Seville. I began to feel once again that intoxicating presence. But whereas before its enduring allure was coupled with unsettling jabs, now the ensnaring presence radiated with a warm glow. The self-satisfaction was still there, but now it came seasoned with self-deprecation and genuine wit. Sure, the man was arrogant, but it came with erudition and depth. He wasn't just projecting out, he was welcoming people in. The man I remembered was polished style. Alistair was chiselled substance. Was this a different man? Or perhaps a master craftsman who had perfected his art? If so, whereas time had worn his looks, it had merely enhanced his charm, imperially ingratiating with his persona. Now so insidious, it was undetectable even to the most cynical, suspicious eye. End of part 1 of part 2.
Whew!
Is it even White Teeth? I don't know.
Is it him?
I started to doubt myself. Was I at it again? Projecting that devil onto a stranger with a similar look and teeth. Motivated by my jealousy of Alistair's relationship with Anna, who of course he's in love with. I'm ashamed to say because it is petty and small, but I had always intensely disliked Anna's numerous boyfriends. Sure, some of them were grade A twats, but for the most part, I disliked them. Even the alright ones, because they were with her. And the more I thought about it, the more I became convinced that, pathetically, I had once again projected what I wanted to see. What a way to rationalise my petty jealousy and frustration about Anna, project my nemesis upon her boyfriend. I looked at him again. Alistair had long hair down to his neck, no trace of a tan, and just generally didn't look like a prick. Was it him? I was no longer sure. It felt like him. I'd only ever got this feeling once before, that night in Seville. But like I said, this was slightly different. Besides, how can you confront someone publicly based on a feeling? I was painfully conscious of what Anna would think. Alistair was different. Was he handsome? Yes, he was. Anna's boyfriends always were, but annoyingly so, not like each moment of his life was being extracted from the cover of GQ. That makes sense? However, I thought, time does make a mockery of all of our faces. Hairstyles change, tans fade, people age. I needed Davey. He'd have known what to do. He always said he'd spot the posing prick a mile off. Rage had now slipped into nauseating confusion and I felt lost. I retreated to the bar and hoped that I would find the answers from the bottom of my glass. After a little while, John approached me. You okay, mate? No, I replied somberly. Ah, Anna, new boyfriend, I see. The usual then, he said, thinking he was being helpful. John, I think her boyfriend might be the guy who robbed me and Davey in Seville, and I hate myself that I can't remember properly, I dismayed. John laughed, barely concealing his dismissiveness. What? Alistair? Alistair is he who must not be named. No, he's lovely. You're just a jelly prick. You weren't there that night. You don't see how slick that bastard was. He had the whole room eating out of his hand, I snapped. John continued to laugh mockingly. You're so salty, man. I can taste it, he said with glee. John, you're fucking useless. You were as much help as you were that night in Seville. If you'd just come home that night, I broke off frustratedly. John laughed again. You know what Johnny Boy always says? If there's a chance of docking at port, this sailor's throwing all his crewmates overboard. What? I retorted exasperatedly. Basically, hoes before bros, he announced with semi-ironic triumphalism. First of all, no one, and I mean absolutely no one, calls you Johnny Boy. And secondly, that hoe is now your wife. I sighed while stifling a snigger. John's head whipped around instantly from one side to the other, as though terrified he'd been caught. Oh God, please don't tell her I said that. What? The weird nautical sex analogy, or the whole calling her a hoe? I said, breaking a smile for the first time all evening. Both, definitely, both, Johnny semi-whispered, still erratically turning his head from one side to the next, making sure the random bird, or Stephanie as she was known, was not within earshot. We both returned to the group and continued to intently observe rather than participate. Alistair was talking to John's brother and I listened from my position 2 people over. He began talking about how he'd just bought the latest Audi Q, something or other, and I drifted away thinking, what a twat. I was depressed and on the brink of making excuses and leaving. This was supposed to be my chance with Anna, and instead I had to endure another new boyfriend and pine over what could have been. I cleared my throat. John, look, mate. I broke off abruptly, and a sudden gleam had caught my attention. It wasn't his teeth, not this time. No, Alistair pushed his left sleeve, and the light danced off the sleek metal of the fancy Swiss watch he was showing off. Once again, I thought, what a twat, and went to continue my farewell. Then, fatefully, something happened that sent the whole night into a screeching halt. I was just in the process of looking away from his barely concealed boasting when my eye lazily travelled up his left arm, and I saw it. The scar!
Yes! Yes! What are you going to do him?
The hideous, disgusting scar, attempting to cloak itself in the iconic crest.
Yes!
That horrible scar, the true window into Alistair's
Yes!
soul. The unmistakable marker of the villainous white teeth.
Get him! Get him! What's happened?
End of part 2.
No!
It's him.
It's him!
It's fucking him.
Bastard! Bastard!
It's a scar.
Bastard!
Will Boyo, aka Mark Ferguson,
Scumbag!
get his vengeance for both him and Davey.
Rest in peace.
Find out next week. But it's time.
Oh, is this it? I'm not sure if I'm ready.
My head began to pound with a deep thunder. Every sinew of my body burned as though fire doused my skin and my nails tore into my palms as rage coalesced around my fists. He saw me staring at his scar, and I caught a smirk forming around his lip and a knowing glint in his eye. The smirk expanded into a predatory grin.
Oh my God.
The mask finally slipped and White Teeth had arrived in all his malevolent glory. The bastard knew who I was all along.
Bastard!
We shared a menacing moment of understanding that reduced the vast populated room to just him and I. You! It's you! I hissed through grinding teeth. Excuse me, mate, he chirped with faux innocence. The whole group went silent, and it felt as though the entire room around us had sunk into a low hush in anticipation of what was to come. I know who you are, and you know me, so don't play fucking dumb, you prick. I seethed.
Yes.
Haha, okay, buddy. I think you've had one too many. He played to the crowd, mocking
Of course he
me.
did, the scumbag prick.
I pretended to mock on his face. No, sorry, the pretend mock on his face. The insulting lying that he didn't know, when we both understood all too well. It catalysed my years of regret and doubt and rage into an explosive concoction of vengeance. Bang!
Yes! Yes! Smashes him! Come on!
My left fist flew up and made crunching impact with the right of White Teeth's imposing shoulder.
Yes!
The mock on his face
Yes!
cycled to shock and then terror in split seconds before resting on dazed emptiness as he stumbled back, collapsing to the floor, crushing through a buffet table as he met the ground. Fuck
God,
you,
God.
I
Justice! God.
Justice!
The end.
No. The air-cutting shriek of dismay Anna let out
Oh yeah, of course. She didn't have a clue.
stays with me to this day. A few other female guests gasped and yelped in a kind of emphatic echo, while some of the men jolted forward and then stopped as though feeling duty-bound to impede any potential fight. Then the entire room fell deathly silent. Every eye lay upon me, scanning me, judging me, even fearing me. I was the bad guy. I was the villain of the piece. The words, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster." I love this guy. Filled my pulsating mind. None of them understand. They couldn't, I thought desperately. Even if I recounted the whole sorry tale, I wouldn't do the suffering justice.
I don't know.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. You'd actually stretch it out over loads of weeks. How do you explain a provocation 11 years in the making? 11 years. Suddenly, a soothing certainty descended on my trembling edifice. A memory materialised, and I knew what I had to do. I turned, picked up the remnants of my pint, raised it above my head, hanging over White Teeth's dazed fumbling, and said, "That one's for you, Davey." I downed the pint, turned, and walked right out of the building.
What a G.
It was a good moment, I won't lie. For the relief more than anything, a modicum of justice had been served. But I knew I'd probably blown any chance I ever had with Anna,
Worth it.
and this pained me immensely. Then one day, a few months later, Anna showed up at my door. John had explained to her, not long after the party, who White Teeth was and what he represented. Anna informed me that after John had told her the story, she had thought it was bullshit, that I'd made a mistake. But to my amazement, she went on to tell me that the story must have sparked a small moment of realisation within her, because she started to see Alistair in a different light. She became suspicious of some of his behaviours, and particularly the fact that he had convinced her dad to invest 10 grand in a supposed property development. It turns out he had conned Anna's father, just as he had Davey and I 11 years prior. The whole thing was a scam. There was no property development, and Alistair was no more his real name than White Teeth. Prick. Anna had dumped him, and he disappeared with all 10 grand of Anna's father's money. Her father was due to invest even more money before they discovered what White Teeth was up to. Anna was incredibly grateful, saying if it wasn't for me, White Teeth might have ruined her family. Neither of us ever saw or heard him again. White Teeth vanished. If there is a moral to this story, maybe, maybe not. I'll let you, the listener, decide. But I would say this. There was nothing, literally nothing, not one thing, I would not have traded to have back that warm summer's day in May 2003. My soul wouldn't have been too high a price. Now, 15 years on from Seville, and having spent 3 years of countless summer's days with Anna, in all seasons, in all weathers, there's one thing, only one, that I would that I wouldn't trade to return to that beautiful day in May. A match can be the most important thing in the world until it's not. Remember, White Teeth is still out there. If you smell absolute confidence sting your nostrils, a presence orchestrating a room before you, all emanating from gleaming blocks of ivory-clad teeth, look to the left arm. Look for the ugly scar shrouded in the beautiful crest, and be wary. I will leave with this final note. Some people hearing this story might say, White Teeth was the villain, so you must be the hero. I'm not a hero. I was just a soldier thought lost in battle who kept a promise to an old friend and came home.
Oh!